She didn't cry right away. For a few seconds, my daughter just stared down at what she'd pulled out of that gift box, that carefully wrapped, ribbon-tied box, and her little face went completely still. Like her brain wastering to process something it couldn't quite believe, then the tears came. Quietly at first. Then all at once, and my mother. She stood right there watching it happen, hands folded, wearing a smile that sent ice straight through my veins. She thought she'd won. She had no idea she just signed her own confession. My name is Clara. I'm 36 years old, and I've spent most of my life trying to earn love from a woman who was too obsessed with bloodlines to understand what love actually means. My mother, Evelyn, didn't just care about appearances. Appearances were her entire identity. The right family name, the right lineage, the right legacy. In her world, those things weren't just important, they were sacred, non-negotiable, worth protecting at any cost. I didn't fully understand how far she'd take that obsession until my daughter Emily came into my life. I adopted Emily as an infant, during a relationship I had before meeting my husband David. From the moment I held her, she was mine, completely, unconditionally, irrevocably mine. A few years later, when David and I built our life together, he loved Emily the exact same way. No hesitation, no stir-risk. When we married, we made it legal, made it permanent. Then David and I had our son Leo together. To us, nothing changed. We had 2 kids. End of story. To my mother, however, something shifted, something deep and ugly, and it would take 18 months for me to realize just how far that shift had gone. It didn't start with anything dramatic. That's the thing about manipulation done well. It hides inside the mundane. It lives inside small moments you're tempted to dismiss. At family dinners, Emily's favorite foods kept disappearing from the table, replaced by things that triggered her allergies. My mother blamed her memory, laughed it off, and changed the subject. Athletic gatherings, Emily was quietly shuffled to the outskirts while Leo sat at Evelyn's right hand like a crowned prince. I told myself it was petty, generational, something I could manage. Then I opened a photo album. My mother had commissioned a professional anniversary album, glossy, beautifully bound, filled with years of family memories. I flipped through page after page, and something felt wrong before I could name it. Then I saw it. Emily had been removed. Not forgotten, not cropped by accident. Removed. Every group photo where Emily had been standing beside me had been digitally altered, her image replaced by a smudged, unnaturally blurred background. When I confronted Evelyn, she pressed a hand to her chest like I'd wounded her, blamed a faulty editing app, and turned the entire conversation into a referendum on my cruelty toward her. I should have seen it then for what it was. A rehearsal. Because what came next was far worse. The heirlooms my grandmother had specifically promised to my firstborn daughter were quietly redirected to a distant cousin. Then came the trust fund. Evelyn casually mentioned she was updating her estate planning to protect her grandchildren. When the paperwork landed, Leo's name was front and center. Emily's name was nowhere. Every time I pushed back, Evelyn deployed the same polished defense. The confused, soft-spoken grandmother who only wanted what was best for everyone. It was masterful, and I was starting to crack under the weight of it. But I had something my mother hadn't accounted for. I had David. My husband works in corporate law. He lives in a world where intentions mean nothing and paper trails mean everything. For months, he'd been watching Evelyn not with a son-in-law's frustration, but with an attorney's cold, calculating instincts. And those instincts were quietly screaming, this wasn't grief. This wasn't favoritism. This was a strategy. When David discovered a property filing that bore my signature, a signature I had absolute align forgiven, he stopped treating this like a family problem and started treating it like what it actually was, a crime. He hired a private investigator who specialized in white-collar family fraud. He brought in a forensic accountant. Together, over the following year, they followed every thread Evelyn had left behind. What they uncovered was breathtaking in its audacity. My mother had been traveling to out-of-town notary offices to avoid local recognition. She had fabricated corporate resolutions. She had forged documents and manipulated estate trustees using an entirely invented legal loophole, one she had constructed from nothing, designed to argue that Emily's adoption was technically invalid. 18 months of planning. Forged signatures. Altered registries. All of it aimed at a single goal, making my daughter legally invisible before she was old enough to fight back. David collected every piece of evidence, every bank record, every photograph from the investigator, every fraudulent document, and he waited. Patiently. Strategically, he was giving her enough rope. Emily's 9th birthday was supposed to be beautiful. Our backyard was full of color, balloons, streamers, the warm smell of birthday cake drifting through the summer air, the sound of children laughing without a care in the world. For one afternoon, the suffocating tension of the past year had finally lifted, and everything felt almost normal again. Then my mother arrived. She walked through our gate wearing a smile I had never seen on her before. Not warm, not proud, triumphant. She greeted guests, kissed cheeks, and waited, with the quiet, practiced patience of Somion who had been rehearsing this moment for a very long time. Then, when every adult and child had gathered around, she pushed a neatly wrapped box into Emily's hands and loudly insisted she open it right then and there in front of everyone. Emily's eyes lit up. She tore through the paper eagerly, already imagining a doll, a book, a game. Inside was a manila envelope. Inside that envelope was a cold legal document and a handwritten letter from her grandmother. Thelator informed Emily, in language carefully chosen to humiliate, that she had no rightful claim to the family name. The accompanying affidavit, a document Evelyn had forged herself, claimed to officially dissolve Emily's recognition within the family heritage entirely. Emily was 9 years old. She couldn't parse the legal terminology, but she understood the cruelty behind it. She felt it deep in her chest before she could even find the words for what was happening. Her face crumpled. Her small shoulders shook. And she began to sob right there, surrounded by her birthday guests, holding papers that had been designed to unmake her. My mother watched and smiled. She believed she was watching her masterpiece reach its final, perfect moment. What happened next is something I will never forget as long as I live. David didn't raise his voice. He didn't lunge forward or make a scene. He simply stepped through the frozen, silent crowd, crouched down beside Emily and pulled her into his arms. He carried her inside, whispering softly into her hair, shielding her from every remaining second of that cruelty. My mother smoothed her expensive silk blouse, took a slow sip of her wine, and leaned toward Ainarby relative. "Honestly," she said, loud enough for others to hear, "Clara has always raised her to be so fragile. It's just a reality check about how the world works." She spent the next 3 hours mingling, laughing, and acting as though she hadn't just shattered a child's heart in front of everyone who loved her. She was completely confident, completely certain she had won. She had no idea about the folder. The last guests were barely out the door when it opened again. David walked back into the living room. He wasn't alone. Beside him stood 3 uniformed police officers and a high-profile family law attorney whose face my mother recognized the instant she saw him. Her smile didn't just fade, it froze, then fell. She attempted one final performance. A scoff, a dismissive tilt of her head. "David, really? You're remaking this into something it simply isn't." He didn't acknowledge her. He walked directly to the coffee table and placed the legal folder down, and the sound it made when it landed seemed to swallow the entire room whole. "No, Evelyn," he said, his voice completely level and cold as stone. "You made it evidence. Yao handed that envelope to Emily in front of dozens of witnesses. You just delivered the one piece of physical proof we'd been waiting for, the final thread that ties your entire 18-month operation together." Watching her read those documents is not something I can describe with any satisfaction, because there was none. Only exhaustion. Only a bone-deep, overwhelming relief. She saw the investigator photographs of her secret notary visits. The forensic accounting records mapping every fraudulent transfer. The certified copies of the forged signatures she had used to pass estate laws. The entire architecture of her plan, spread across the coffee table in front of her, in front of witnesses, in front of law enforcement. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone and called her own attorney, the corporate lawyer she had trusted to handle anything. She explained the situation rapidly, desperately, her voice climbing higher with every word. The silence that followed on the other end stretched long and terrible. "Evelyn," her lawyer finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "If you physically handed that affidavit to your granddaughter today in front of witnesses, you didn't just modify an estate plan. You committed multiple federal offenses. You have completely dismantled your own defense. There is nothing I can do for you now." 18 seconds, 18 months of meticulous scheming, and it was over in 18 seconds. The legal consequences came swiftly and completely. My mother faced multiple counts of corporate fraud. She lost her standing in the very family estate she had spent years trying to control. The relatives she had worked so hard to impress slowly disappeared from her life, one by one, until there was no one left. And us, we moved forward. Emily is doing beautifully. She has a father who chose her, a brother who adores her, and a mother who would burn the whole world down before letting anyone steal her peace again. She is proof, living, breathing, joyful proof, that a family built on love runs deeper than any bloodline ever could. Now I want to hear from you. If someone in your own family was quietly working to erase someone you loved, what would you do? How far would you go to protect them? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to Velvet Stories so you never miss what comes next.